Hello and welcome to Kojo's Trick Lab. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to do a raise. Now this is one of my all-time favorite tricks. It took me a good few years to learn. Until this day I'm still learning new things about it. That's why I'm actually remaking this tutorial, as I did used to have another raise tutorial. And since making that, I've learned a bunch of new information and a load of common mistakes that lots of people are making. So hopefully I can break this down in a much more clear way and help you get that trick. Now before we get started, there's a couple of things you need to be able to do. Make sure you can do a tornado kick. It's not a hard move to learn. You could probably learn it in 10 minutes. So just make sure you have tornado kick down. It's not a problem for you. You've done quite a few of them before you move on to doing raise. Another trick that can really help with this is a gumby. Depending on your shoulder and back and hip flexibility, you might actually find raise easier than a gumby. So you don't need to have gumby, but if you do have it, or if you are able to learn it first, it will help. You don't need to be super flexible for this trick, but the more flexible you are, especially in your hips, back, shoulders, the more it's going to help you. So try to be stretching regularly for this trick. I am going to go into some tips specifically for training your raise, things that can help get your body ready for the trick. So we'll go into those at the end. But yeah, let's get started. Actually, one more thing before we start. I call this trick raise. Other people pronounce it Raiz. Some people pronounce it Raiz. I think that's the proper Portuguese pronunciation. I'm probably murdering it with my accent. But yeah, doesn't really matter which one of those you want to call it. I call it raise. So step one towards learning raise. We're going to adapt your tornado kick to get a basic understanding of the movement. So before you go for it, do a couple of tornado kicks. Make sure you've warmed up the muscles you're going to be using for your raise. And the first thing you're going to change is you're going to take away the kick. So just go for your tornado kick exactly the same, but just don't kick. Keep your leg chambered all the way around. And then after that, you're going to straighten out both of your legs as you go around. So if you're a left side twister, try and drive that left leg as high as you can. And then just allow the right leg to trail behind. Try and keep it somewhat straight. Doesn't have to be locked out straight, but you don't want it to be chambered either. So aim to have it straight. Make sure you film yourself and watch it back so you know that you're doing it right. Step two. Now, we're going to change it up a little bit. You're going to do pretty much exactly the same thing. But after you've lifted up that left leg, if you twist left, right leg, if you twist right, and you've pushed your hips forwards, you're going to allow yourself to lean back a little bit, look over your shoulder in the direction you're turning. So push your hips out, look over the shoulder, and what that's going to do is make you invert just a little bit more. So you'll see I'm around horizontal now, I'm getting onto that sort of axis. So it's starting to look a little bit like a raise. We still have a load of changes to make it into a really good raise, but hopefully you're getting the idea of kind of what it should feel like. Make sure you drill this step as much as you need to. Make sure you've got it right before you move on. You should be horizontal at least at some point in the movement. Also, if you can arch your back, then that's a bonus. Pushing your hips forwards should naturally make you start to do this, so it shouldn't be too hard for you, depending on your back flexibility. Okay, now we're going to get into the meat of the information. So there's a lot to know about raise. It's a pretty technical trick to be able to do it really well anyway. It's one of those tricks that's really easy to learn, but incredibly hard to master. Till this day, I'm still changing things with my raise to improve it, and I've been training the trick for 7 years now. So when you're applying the information I'm about to teach you, just work at your own pace, change things one at a time, identify all the issues one by one, and focus on fixing that issue when you train the trick. You're going to struggle to do everything right all at once. So just tackle all of these things one by one, and eventually you should have yourself a really nice raise. So first off, let's just walk through the technique. You're going to start off facing away from the direction you're going to be traveling. I'll explain it all going to the left, as that's the way I go. You can just mirror everything if you go the other direction. So first off, as I start to pivot on the balls of my right foot, my left arm is going to come over the top into the direction of travel. I'm going to swing the arm straight downwards towards the direction I want to go. After my left arm's fully extended, I'm going to lock out my shoulders. Now, hopefully this helps you to understand what I mean by that. They should be moving in unison. Your arms shouldn't be getting any closer together or any further apart. This was a huge issue for me in Raiz and in touchdown Raiz. So if you get this right in your Raiz, it's probably going to help you in touchdown Raiz as well. Just to get the feel for this, you can practice moving your arms like this before you go for the trick. So continue to swing your left arm downwards and your right arm should start to come over the top. Make sure your right arm swings straight forwards in the direction you want to travel. You don't want to swing it around the side or that's going to make your Raiz go around the side, which isn't ideal. You're aiming to go over the top as much as you can anyway. As you're performing this arm motion, you want to step onto your right foot. Ideally, you want your toes to be pointing in the direction of travel. Now, your leg can turn inwards a little bit, but you don't want to turn your foot any more than 90 degrees ideally. This is one of those things that may take a while to fix, but if you just focus on it every time you're drilling your Raiz, then over time you should be able to correct it. Remember to just fix one of these things at a time. That's the method I've found the most useful for me when mastering this trick. As you step your way onto that right foot, you want to start kicking your left foot backwards as hard as you can. Now, when you kick this left foot backwards, it's important that you don't just kick the leg up, you want to extend fully at the hips. This example should show you what I mean. So this is me just kicking my leg backwards. And then this is me kicking my leg backwards and extending at the hips. You want to push your butt backwards as you extend your leg. It's going to help you get a much bigger range of motion, which is going to give you much more power into your Raiz. The next thing to focus on is your spot. So after your left arms come down and your right arm's reaching over the top, you want to spot along your right arm at the floor in front of you. You want to keep your eyes on this spot all the way up until the point you leave the ground. So as you're leaving the ground, both of your arms are going to come into your chest. But before then, you want your shoulders to be locked out the whole way through that step and all the way through your takeoff. Now, I know this is a ton of information. I'm just going to try and give you as much as possible so that over time you can change your Raiz and keep making it better and better. After you've performed this arm motion, stepped onto your right foot, driven your left leg back and fully extended at the hips, you want to try and push your hips outwards as you're taking off. This is going to allow you to get more of an arch in your back and help you to maintain your spot all the way through the trick. As ideally, you want to be looking at the same spot on the ground all the way over, right up until when you land. This can be really hard to do, especially if you're not that flexible, but make it your intention and it will help to keep you inverted, and over time, you should be able to keep your eyes on that spot for longer and longer. After you take off and you've pushed your hips forwards, you've got that arch in your back, you've swung your arms, your foot's facing in the right direction, you've done all of those things, you want to make sure you keep tension throughout your body all the way around. Your left leg that you kicked backwards should be reaching for the ground. You want to do one continuous kick all the way through. So you're not just kicking up and then waiting to land. That left leg is driving all the way around. You're trying to land on it as soon as possible. The more separation you can get between your legs, the better. The easier it's going to be for you to get round. So you should feel that stretch at your hips when you're doing this trick. Make sure you don't bend your right leg too much when you step onto it. You want it to be a quick push through your toes so you don't have too much contact time and you can carry momentum from that step. If you take too long, then you're going to end up turning too much and going around the side. So that's pretty much it for the technique of just doing the move. Now, there's a couple of other things I want to go into a bit of detail on. So there are different types of Raiz. You can do a high Raiz or a low Raiz or somewhere in the middle. It really depends on what you're doing out of it. If you're going into a tack trick, you might want to do a really low raise with your head nearly on the floor. Or if you're trying to do a raise variation or just a really high floaty raise, you might want to have your head significantly higher. So here's a couple of tips on changing the inversion level of your raise so that you can make it useful for different things. So if you're doing a low fast raise, you want your head and chest to already be pretty low as you step onto that right leg. The lower they are when your right leg first makes contact with the floor, the lower your raise is going to be. If you're trying to do a higher, more floaty raise, try and step onto your right foot in a completely upright position. This means as you start to drive that leg backwards, your head and chest are already nice and high, so you can throw them down from there. That's just going to set your center of gravity much higher, so you're going to have more time in the air. Depending on what you're doing out of your raise, you're probably going to want to be somewhere in the middle. If you're trying to do a nice swing out of it, somewhere in the middle of your head being really low when you step onto that foot and being completely upright. You're only going to want to go really, really low if you're trying to come out of the trick with your chest right down. If you're trying to swing it into a triple cork or something, or do a tack double full or something like that. That's the only time where you're going to throw your head and chest right down. For most swings, you want to be somewhere in the middle, and then just to do a floaty raise or to variate it, you want to be a bit more upright. So that's really up to you what you choose to do. It depends what kind of aesthetic you're going for as well. Now, even with all of this information, raise is probably still going to be quite a tough move for you. It took me years to get this trick down. So if you've been trying it and you're really struggling, just hang in there and keep on working on it. It's hard to explain how much work I've put into Raiz. I think Raiz comes second to gainer switch in the tricks that I've done the most out of anything. I found Raiz really hard as naturally from my Websters I kick back my right leg, so it was a real struggle learning Raiz. I've had countless sessions where I've gone out and just trained Raiz. So I've really trained this trick more than almost anything. And I didn't understand it at all at the start. For years, I didn't make much progress with it. I mean, granted, I didn't have all this information, so I was going about it kind of wrong. So you should get it much faster. But if you are someone who feels like you can't get it, just letting you know, you can. I couldn't understand this move at all for the life of me. So if you really put in the work, if you really want to learn it, then just keep at it and you will get there. It's just hard. There are a few things that are going to help you along the way. If you're someone like me who naturally kicks back the other leg for Websters, then yeah, you're probably going to struggle with it. But something you can do that will really help with that is using ankle weights and practicing leg raises. You can practice these leg raises pushing your hips backwards, so you're really mimicking the takeoff for a raise. If you hold on to something like this, then you can see I'm extending at the hips as I kick the leg back. Practicing normal leg raises with the ankle weight will also help strengthening the muscles that you're going to use for your raise. So I'd recommend just doing both of these leg raises. The one where you extend at the hip and the one where you just kick your leg back. They're going to train slightly different muscles. They're both going to help. It's also going to help with your coordination and your understanding of how to kick that leg backwards. As if you naturally kick back the right leg, it's probably going to feel really weird and alien for you. But you can get past that. I had that same issue. If you work on these leg raises enough and put in enough drills on your raise, then you will get past it and it will feel just as comfortable as when you kick the right leg back. This is going to transfer over to a bunch of other tricks, so it's really worth you putting in the work. It's going to help with your touchdown raise, side swipe, raise twist, envergado, anything on that axis. So I highly recommend you putting in the work for this. Another drill that can really help with your understanding and getting the feel for this, that I wish I'd done a lot more of, especially when it comes to getting the arm timing right, getting the shoulders locked out, getting your foot facing the right direction, is doing these shadow raises. So practicing this, just going through the motion of what you should be doing in your takeoff without actually doing a raise. Now this isn't much impact on your body as you're not actually doing the trick, so I'd recommend just doing this a bunch of times. Really getting into the hang of having your arms swinging with locked out shoulders in time with your step, practicing getting the spot right, pushing your hips out, extending your left leg fully, all of those things. There is a lot to think about, so why not fix the issues you have with it without actually even doing the move? And then when you come to do it, it should all be working much more in time. Something that's really important when you do this is making sure you're doing it right. Film yourself doing this drill, watch it frame by frame, figure out what's going wrong. Are your arms coming too close together? Are you fully extending the back leg? Are you swinging your arms too late? Are you swinging your arms too early? Really put in the work to study what you're doing and make sure you're drilling good form. And the third tip I have for you when training these is regularly stretching. Make sure you're regularly doing the routines on this website. Raiz is really affected by your flexibility. If you're not flexible at all, then you're just not going to be able to do that good a raise. You can do the movement still, but it's not going to look that great. So the more flexible you get, the better it's going to look, the easier it's going to feel, the more power it's going to give you. So make sure you're doing a shoulder and back routine, the front split routine, box split routine, lower body stretching, hip mobility, all of those things. Just cycle through them. Make sure you're stretching as much as you can, really. I try to stretch every single day. That works best for me. Try and find a routine that works really good for you. Now, I've kind of gone over the common mistakes as I've gone along, so I'm not going to go too into that. This was a pretty in-depth explanation of Raiz, so if you're watching yourself do the movement, you should be able to figure out what you're doing wrong. I've told you quite a lot about this trick, so I'm sure you can analyze your own attempts and figure out where you're going wrong, and then focus on fixing that issue. Try not to change everything at once, just think one thing at a time, maybe get your foot positioning right, and then focus on getting the arm timing right, then focus on pushing your hips out, and then focus on the spot. Just one at a time, work through all of these things, and eventually you're gonna have yourself a lovely raise. It's a really fun one to do. The better you get at it, the more fun it is. It's gonna help with loads of other tricks, so put in the work. Get that trick. And when you get it really nice, you might want to point your toes while you're in the air just to make it look a bit prettier. That's something that's missing from mine. I'll definitely be working on that, as well as getting more back arch as well, because that's going to make it look even nicer. I hope this helps you with your raise. It's the tutorial that I wish I had when I was learning it, as it's taken me literally half a decade to pick up all of these different tips. So I do hope it helps you. I hope you get it much faster than I did. If you're going about it the right way, I'm sure you will. If this helps you and you do learn the trick, make sure you post it on Instagram and tag Kojo's Trick Lab, or just share it in our members group so I can have a look. As it is awesome to see your guys' progression, it motivates me to keep making these videos and keep pushing myself to make them as good as possible. Thanks for watching, see you next time. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe for new videos every single week. And if you want access to over 400 videos like this made to help you progress faster in tricking, check out kojostricklab.com. There's a link in the description below. So yeah, check that out. We post 24 new videos per month. There's just a lot on there. Go onto the site and you can have a look and see all of the videos that we've got before signing up.